Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Akiona Law podcast, wherein we talk about everything and anything that intersects with the areas of family law and divorce. And today I have with me collaborative law attorney Sara Wahl. Hi, Sara. Welcome to our podcast.
Hi, thank you for having me.
And Sara, you've been a collaborative law attorney. Well, I guess let me ask you this. What is collaborative law? Tell
So
us about what you do.
okay, so collaborative law, or people may have heard the term collaborative divorce. So it's a term of art. It's not. It doesn't mean we're just friendly. It means that we work in a laid out process, and the process involves working as a team with two attorneys, oftentimes a coach who has a mental health background, and oftentimes a financial neutral or a certified divorce financial analyst. So we work as a team in an interest-based process in a series of meetings where we walk through and resolve all the issues related to a divorce or any family law case that the parties wish to use the process for. But it's contract-based. We sign a contract that's called a participation agreement. And in that agreement that puts us into the collaborative process talks about that the attorneys will not go to court. So if someone decides to go to court, we will withdraw, and that we can't represent them in any sort of contested court proceeding. It's a very lengthy contract, and we can talk about that later, but once we sign that contract, we're in the formal collaborative process where we work as a team to resolve all issues related to whatever their family law matter might be.
And how long have you been practicing law in general?
So I graduated from law school in 1999, and then didn't do collaborative law. I didn't know about it until 2004. So a pretty short track to that.
So when did you start practicing collaborative law?
So I heard about it in 2004, and there were only about, I don't know, 5 or 6 people that were starting to do it. And we didn't have any laws, or, it was just purely contractually based process, very similar to mediation. And so I heard about it. I was actually on the Washington State Bar Association Lawyers Assistants panel. And we had a little retreat, and somebody came and talked about it. And a colleague of mine came and talked about it. And I was like, oh my God, I need to find out more about this. And, there wasn't even really any training around. I had to go out of the state to get trained. And it was a very, very small group of people, and who had started talking about it maybe a year and a half before that. So
then did you start practicing collaborative law in 2004 then?
I think it was technically 2005, because I also had to get be trained as a mediator. The organization that they had at the time had a requirement that you have a 40-hour mediation training, which I hadn't done. I hadn't done that, which was pretty, it's pretty intense. And so I also had to do that to become a member. But there were no cases. There were so few cases. It wasn't like you could get a bunch of cases back then. It was like, a pretty big struggle and a long trajectory to where we are today.
And so because there weren't enough collaborative law cases, and were you just doing the traditional divorce cases?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
I tried to use some of the principles, to try and say, hey, let's just work together. Let's figure this out. And as as a longtime family law attorney, there's lots of attorneys that are great about that. And they're like, hey, yeah, let's not waste people's money. Yeah. Let's figure this out. Let's get her done. And, a level of civility. But I think that level of civility has gone down as time has gone on. I think people were a little bit cooler back then about just, why are we wasting time and money? Whereas now everything is just such a big drama and so expensive. And, I don't know. So So there were always those attorneys that you could work with. So I tried to, I tried
Mhm.
to bring those principles and work out cases that way. And, I explain collaborative process, collaborative law to all my consultations. Um, but I think the more I was experienced, the more I was able to sort of explain all the different process options to clients. And almost never do they choose litigation if they're given like a range of options. And it's been, I mean, it's been my experience for many years now.
I think the interesting thing is in terms of like you're talking about some attorneys are more cooperative than others. And it almost feels like since the pandemic has happened, that a lot more attorneys have gone a lot, they seem to be more heightened in terms of the drama and litigation and uncooperativeness and just aggressiveness. The pandemic, I feel like, has heightened all of that, which kind of makes me want to go just the opposite way because
Yeah.
it's just, as as a collaborative attorney, it's just so much more efficient and less stressful for parties to work together. So
Right.
I want to touch upon like what you said, because you said there were different methods of getting divorced. And once you explained it to people, people tended to choose a collaborative route. So can you explain those different processes of the divorce, I guess?
Yeah. So, I mean, I always have a chart that I sit down with,
Okay.
and it's kind of a picture, and I say, okay, here's all the different ways you could do this. And I
Mhm.
explain how the traditional litigation process works. I explain, you hire your attorneys, somebody serves someone with divorce papers or whatever kind of case it is. And then you go through this, almost year-long process of the
Yes.
attorneys fighting back and forth.
Yeah.
Maybe you have motion hearings, temporary motion hearings, and how expensive each one of those is to do.
Right.
The expensive way that we gather information, like financial information or other information, evidence, basically. How you can have to do depositions, you do, what gathering information is called discovery.
Discovery.
And it can take, it's very expensive. And so the attorneys just go back and forth, depending on how much of a nightmare of the attorneys are. It's like, just a bunch of crap that happens and money that's being spent. And then
Right.
you're required to go to what is called mediation. But that's really, they don't teach mediation that way. What you're really going to is what's called a settlement conference. You prepare for this sort of all day exhausting, you kind of prepare like your whole case, like kind of like you're going to trial. You kind of write like a semi-trial brief saying, this is
Right.
what my client wants, this is why they should get it. Both parties do that, they give it to the mediator, and then you're in separate rooms with your attorney, and the mediator is going back and forth trying to cut a deal and telling you the strengths and weakness, sort of evaluating your case and trying to cut a deal because you have a trial date looming. And so when I tell
So
people,
true.
96 to 98% of cases settle in that settlement conference. So I say, if you're only 2 to 4% of cases and you're never going to go to trial, why wouldn't you start with mediation, at least
Yeah.
mediation? And so then I explain the difference between what is called mediation in a traditional litigation case and what is taught when you go to learn mediation at a law school or any mediation organization. They teach you what's called interest-based mediation. And interest-based mediation is helping the parties define their goals and interests and trying to, help them co-create an agreement that meets both parties' important needs and interests. And
And it's sorry for
yeah,
interrupting you, but I think it's important to note that in traditional litigation, like how you were saying, mediation is not interest-based. It's essentially a settlement conference.
right, right,
And so now,
absolutely.
yeah, so now you're talking about interest-based mediation, which is a different process than your traditional
Right.
mediation for litigation.
Right. And so it's really important that people understand that difference, because the only place they use that kind of mediation, that settlement conference mediation, is in like court. I mean, if you hire a mediator that's been, or even if you take it in law school, they teach interest-based mediation, because we know there's plenty of evidence to know that people come to better settlements when they feel like their interests and needs have been met. rather than will they win
Right.
or lose. And we all know, I mean, you've had the experience, I'm sure, of spending 12 hours in a settlement conference. You settle the case,
Oh, yes.
everyone signs an enforceable agreement that means they don't get to change their mind, and the next morning you get the call, I hate this. You get that
Yeah.
call from your client. I mean, it happens all the time. And so in interest-based mediation, you don't do that. You have time to think about it and continue the conversation if it doesn't quite fit. And so when I explain court process and interest-based mediation, then I kind of go back, you could do interest-based mediation. You can use an interest-based mediator, and the two of you work with that person, and you can use attorneys as needed, collaborative attorneys. And then I explain the collaborative law process, and I say, well, this is more process, and this is also an interest-based process, but you both have attorneys, and then we have a team, and we work as a team. So, I explain all the process options because sometimes people don't need that much process, but if they're working with a mediator, an interest-based mediator that's trained in collaborative law, collaborative process, and then they use collaborative attorneys on the side as needed, like that's a huge part of my practice, is just being an as needed collaborative attorney. So as long as all the professionals involved have this collaborative law training, they're going to do interest-based work. They're going to, help meet the needs, whatever the people need. And so it doesn't have to be the full collaborative process where you sign that participation agreement, but working with a bunch of people, like that's half of my practice. And then I explain to people, okay, you could also do what we call a kitchen table divorce. That's you two hashing it out over the kitchen table. And I said, usually if you have kids or you've been married for a while, that's not the smartest. But if you've been married for a couple of years, you both have good jobs, you both have your own stuff, and you just want to go your separate ways and keep what you have, that's easy enough. You can use an attorney to just draft up your agreement and push it through the court, or you can just try and do it yourself. So I explain all of that. And then people never say, why would I spend all this money only to settle in mediation or whatever, what they call mediation, 10, 11 months later? Why would I spend all that money? That doesn't seem smart. But I also explain the emotional cost of being in this heightened, like stressful litigation for almost an entire year or more. That is really stressful, and it's about fear, it's about conflict, it's about winner loser. So that's not it's all fear-based too, which is negative.
So what made you decide to get into collaborative law, to switch from doing your traditional divorce to collaborative divorces?
So when I heard about it, I was just like, oh my God, I can't really say, it just sort of like rang a bell, like, oh, this is what I should be doing. Like, because it just kind of all came together because of my past. So growing up as a child of a really bad conflicted divorce, and, just all the fallout of that growing up, and, my experiences trying to grow up and trying to figure my life out after a lot of, awful things going on. And, and we can talk about that however you want, but,
Okay.
it just totally felt like I came full circle of like, oh my, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. So
Yeah.
other kids don't have to grow up the way I did. And
So
maybe.
yeah, that's it's interesting how the experiences from our past influence who we are today, especially in terms of being family law attorneys and how we practice. And it's interesting how you're talking about in terms of traditional family law litigation. What people don't realize is that it's a year of just stress and negativity and that emotional turmoil that it places on the family. And you went through that, I guess, as a young child. Can you tell us, like, how old were you when your parents got divorced?
So I think of 8 or just
Oh,
9, maybe just 9. So it's
Wow.
like, also that I can't tell if that's the age where you really start sort of watching people, or your thought process becomes more complicated. Or if it's because it was so traumatic that I remember
Yeah.
so much from that time. It's hard to say, but yeah, not about 9.
Can you talk about that, about the experience of your parents' divorce?
I mean, it was, it was 1979. So that's how it was. The attorneys were probably much more civil back then, I'm guessing,
Were
but
they?
I don't know. I mean, anyways, I mean, I don't know much about the legal wranglings of it, but
Yeah,
I definitely know that, there, we didn't know much about how this affects kids back
yeah,
then. So, automatically the mom had the kids, and my mom has some mental health issues that, are, not, she's functioning, but she was, no one, she was, so mad all the time, and just like saying awful stuff about my dad the whole time. And of course, my dad didn't want to deal with it. So, she kind of decided everything that was going to happen. And there was just so much conflict. And, it was just, she would say, oh, if your dad loved you, he wouldn't have left, and all this,
oh, oh.
just like insane stuff.
Well,
And
nowadays we call that abusive use of conflict,
right,
because you're talking negatively about the other
right,
parent, involving the kids in the middle, parental alienation.
right. All of that. And honestly, back then, I don't think that a dad had much of a chance in hell of getting custody of kids back then. Or, and we didn't have more shared parenting like we do today. And we don't have the body of research that talks about what happens to kids when they have little involvement with their fathers in their
Yeah,
lives, which we do now. And so, and that's not to say every family needs to have an equal parenting plan, but
right.
certainly relegating one parent to, Disneyland every other weekend parent is not going to be good for kids unless there's something functionally wrong with that parent. Like, obviously if there's domestic violence, or drug and alcohol abuse, or mental health issues. I mean, honestly, I think if that case happened today, we would have
Yeah.
probably ended up with our dad. Like, I mean, but so, I mean, it was, I don't know how much of it was the actual court battle that it wasn't like a Kramer versus Kramer situation where I remember any of that, but
Okay.
the fallout of it was that, a really hard childhood, and, a really long, uh, growth process for me, I guess I would say, to become functional after that. But what was that your question, or did I answer your question?
I think you did. No, but I think it goes, I think it goes more into that trauma, because like you were so young, 8 or 9 years old. And it's not necessarily the fact that like you're talking about Kramer versus Kramer, right? We're being in court, but it's just that fallout where you have one parent just bad mouthing, being negative all the time, and how that really impacted you as a young child. Um, like can you talk, like, how did that affect you growing up though?
Well, I mean, it was, I mean, there was other things that, it was awful because, we loved our dad, and
Right.
we didn't understand, when the person you're closest to tells you X, Y, and Z, I mean, you kind of believe them, and, you don't have the frame of reference of this person's crazy. Like, so it was, it caused
Yeah.
a huge rift in the relationship with our dad. And then, our dad got remarried and had other kids, and you know part of the part of the conflict of that led into the conflict with my mom. So like we stopped seeing him, and and then, I became a teenager, and then I was like, then I started using drugs, and I was like, I finally felt better. Like,
Mm,
I literally remember thinking like, oh my God, I finally feel a sense of peace right now.
yeah.
Like, I was just so torn up for so many years, like from age
Wow.
9 to, 13, 14, that the second I used drugs, I was just like, okay.
Yeah. It
So
went
I was
away.
able to tune a lot of it out after that point, because of that, which helped. I mean, probably saved my life. Honestly, I think I would have killed myself. It wasn't
Whoa.
for that. I just was like, I mean, I really did feel suicidal for so many years
Wow.
until I
Wow.
started using drugs. Cause then I finally was like, okay, whew, like I can take this feeling
Yeah.
away.
Yeah. And I think that's, sorry you went through that, but it's so powerful. It really is. It's so powerful because that impact that basically had to do with one parent's negativity towards the other parent and essentially just alienating you from your father. It just, in a way, it was like crazy making, unintentional crazy making, where you had to, it was, it was either take your own life or resort to drugs to just make the pain stop because you were in so much pain
Yeah.
because one parent wasn't providing you with love, security. You didn't have, and you weren't seeing your dad.
Well, he wasn't really providing security. I mean, he wasn't really being honest with us about other stuff. And it was very confusing. Like he said, we're going to tell you we're getting married tonight at dinner, but I'm not going to get married. So just go along with it. So my sister and I were like, what? Like, I'm like, 11. I mean, it was, like that was a total mind game. Why would you force your kids to sit through this like announcement of I'm getting married, but you've told us behind the scenes that that's not happening. It was so strange. I mean, honestly,
Okay.
so we had that going on, and then our mom, I mean, it was just like, I mean, it was just a nightmare. So, so like I said, when you find the drugs, you're like, okay, now I can just, at least I don't have to feel any of this because it
Yeah.
doesn't make any sense to me. That
So, and how did you get through all of this then? I mean, you mentioned, because I mean, obviously you're not using drugs anymore.
well, actually, no, I'm just kidding.
I mean, yeah,
I'm
but like, so
lucky. On
yeah,
I
you
did.
made it out.
I did. I mean, I was really lucky. I mean, I became a heroin addict, and I was homeless,
Okay.
and I mean,
Wow.
if I was doing it today, I would be dead, for
Yeah.
sure, because of what's out there now. But I don't know. I mean, I went to treatment probably 10 times, and
Wow.
um, honestly, I ended up just getting to a place where I was like, I can't, I always had this sense like I'm not supposed to be doing this, and
Yeah.
I don't know if that's true for people that also die. I don't know, but I should have died for sure. And I just got to a place where it's like, I'll do anything I have to do to stay clean and sober. And, I went to AA, went to NA, and
Mm.
made that, huge part of my life. And, did a lot of work on myself. I did, therapy, which still we're doing, like
Yeah.
going through another round of that at age 53. So that's fun. But, it's kind of that continued like willingness to sort of look at the truth about yourself and sort of see how you move in the world. So yeah, honestly, a lot of luck, a lot of hard work, um, being willing to look at myself. And life's good now. It's been a long road.
And you're in a 12-step recovery program.
Yeah, I mean,
And
go ahead. Sorry.
no, I was gonna say, and how long have you been clean and sober?
So I've been clean. Well, I got clean originally in 1990 and stayed clean for like 8 years. And then I relapsed taking pills for a little
Oh,
bit of
okay.
time. But I've been clean in February 10th, 2023, it will be 23 years.
Wow,
So
congratulations.
since that, but I mean, the relapse wasn't great, but it was fairly, so I mean, I've been doing recovery since 1990, but you know, straight
Yeah,
23 years in February 10th.
in February 2023. Wow, congratulations. Hey, February 2023, 23 years.
Yeah, I know. Because it was 2/10/00. Yeah, that's the
Okay.
birthday. Cool. I mean,
Yeah,
it's shocking
congratulations
that
on that.
those years have gone so fast now, but so much is, so much has happened in them now. That's like my whole career is in that time, it really feels like.
So what made you decide to get into law?
So I was so when I got clean in 1990, I dropped out of school, like dropped out of college. And then when I got clean, I went back to school, got a degree, just a BA in criminal justice, because I was interested in, crime and whatnot.
Okay.
And then couldn't really, then I almost, well, I was a drug and alcohol counselor for a little bit of time. And then I was like, I'm
Okay.
not really down with that. And then I was like, well, and then I was a nanny. And I was like, after about a year and a half of
Yeah.
that, I was like, I got to do something else. This isn't going to work.
Yeah.
So I was like, I'll go to law school. So I went to law school. And on the first day of
Wow.
law school, they're like, hey, how many of you went to law school? Because there was no math on the LSAT. And everyone's like crazy.
Oh yeah.
So, I kind of thought I'd be a criminal lawyer. That was always interesting to me, but
Okay.
I didn't really, honestly, I think I went to law school so I would feel better about myself, because I still, at that point in time, had really low self-esteem.
Okay. So how would that's really interesting. So you feel like going to law school would help you feel better about yourself? Like how so?
I mean, I think that I just felt, I mean, there actually is research showing that people with higher degrees have lower self-esteem, because
Ah,
I
oh,
can't remember where I read that years ago, but I just felt like so inadequate, so less
mm,
than, I had some
yeah.
learning disabilities that were never addressed when I was young. So I was always that
Okay.
student that they were like, oh, that you're not very good, you're not smart, you're not, so I was like,
Oh
I
my.
always just felt less than, I think,
Yeah.
intellectually. And in some ways I still do, because I have some of those, learning problems. And I also think maybe I have a little bit of brain damage, honestly. Um, my critical thinking is not fabulous. And it used to be better, but I don't know. So I just thought, well, if I can say I'm a lawyer or I went to law school, that I'll feel like it's sort of a false sense of, I mean, I wouldn't have told you that at the time, but at the
Yeah.
it's pretty obvious now.
Well, because our society also too values education as well. And I always kind of thought like, well, growing up, not growing up, but through my own circumstances too, right? It's just law just seems so mysterious and unknown. And to just have that knowledge, to just kind of peel back that mask and figure it out is like, just what is it? So you don't have to feel so helpless and powerless.
Right, right.
Yeah.
And I think also I felt like in my sort of my parents' minds and my generation, you're probably your generation, it's that parents always thought if you're a doctor or a lawyer, like that's the most prestigious thing you can
Ah,
be. Right? Like that was sort of the thing. Even though, if you'd have gone into like commercial real estate, you would have made a lot more money.
yeah.
But
Yeah.
they didn't really understand that. But at that time, I think that I honestly felt like if I do this, then maybe my dad will be impressed with me or will love
Wow.
me.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. No, yeah, I hear you on that, especially too. I think a lot of people, not a lot of people, but I think one of the with drugs and alcohol use, it's that feeling less than. I feel less than.
Right.
So it's really kind of interesting, that you touched upon that, and thank you for sharing that. 'Cause that is a big thing of alcohol, drug use, not feeling less than. And when you take that substance, you feel like you can do anything.
Right. Yeah.
You're funny, you're smarter, you're prettier, you're outgoing, if you're a woman, you're like Cindy Crawford.
Right.
You feel like, and if you're a man, maybe you feel like you're Superman. I don't know, Brad Pitt, George
Right.
Clooney.
Brad Pitt.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
So that's so then you go to so but then how did you get into so you wanted to do criminal justice? How did you get into family law? Is it because based what happened?
No, I honestly I couldn't get a job. I
Okay.
tried to get a job being a public defender, and I practiced by myself for a little while, did some misdemeanor criminal, low grade misdemeanor stuff. Tried to get a job at one of the public defense firms. I couldn't get the job. I never would have gotten a job as a prosecutor because of, my background. I have a couple little crimes in there related to my drug addiction. And I ended up just getting a job where the job was family law, and I just kind of had to teach myself how to do it. And you know, that's where I ended up doing it, just because I couldn't get any other job, and I didn't really like it per se,
Yeah.
because I just felt like all I'm doing is causing conflict, and just like the ramped up nature of it and the energy from the people, it just you've always I mean I always felt like this constant state of anxiety. um
Oh, yeah.
what am I going to walk into that's on my desk tomorrow that I have to deal with right now, because
Like
it's,
what email
or
or
what motion do I have to
what
respond to? Like that, that unpredictability of that just made me crazy. And I just like it. And if it happened, I had to deal with it right now. Otherwise I couldn't relax. So it was just
right.
not a good fit for me. And I just go around and around and around of like I'd read someone's motion, I'd be like, oh my God, they're right. Like I just like that's a good motion. They're gonna win. Like I always would like they would convince me they were gonna win. Even though, I'd spent so much time writing these motions, just like wanting it to be perfect. Like I had this
Right.
perfectionism about it. Like I have to make this as good as it can be. And I just could never just let it go, So I was always just vibrating up here in an anxiety state, and I just hated it.
Yeah.
But I was doing it, and then I heard about collaborative law, and I was just like, oh my God, like this is, because I did it. There were many attorneys that were like just such a pleasure to work with, even in litigation. They just made it easy, and we could be cool, and I really liked that. That kind of relationship with whoever we call opposing counsel.
Being civil. I
Yeah.
have to this is an example of family law litigation. Did a consult with someone, right? Child support modification, post-secondary modification. So the person didn't hire. Then just recently, the person got served discovery, which is interrogatories. They got it on Christmas Eve.
Oh God.
That is family law litigation for you. I'm like, oh my gosh, who does that?
That is
And granted, it was, and of course, right, the person called me once the Christmas holidays had passed to say, hey, I got this. It's a 63-page interrogatory for child support modification and post-secondary. And guess what grade the kid is in? A junior.
Oh my
A
God.
junior in high school. The kid does not know where he's going to go to college. The kid hasn't
Right.
been accepted to college.
Right.
The kid is getting like 1 or 2 Fs. The kid may not graduate. And I'm like, oh my gosh.
Right.
I'm going to say this. You stupid attorney. Are
Yeah.
you serious? Are
Right.
you serious?
Right.
And that just
Yeah.
that just makes me want to scream to no end and pick up the phone. And it's a newer attorney.
Uh-huh.
And his mom is an attorney.
Uh-huh.
So he worked in his mom's office. So he thinks he knows. I don't even know what, I'm not going to speculate what he knows, but I'm
Right.
like, this is not how you practice law.
Right.
You are wasting your client's money.
Right.
And it's sad. It's really sad. And it doesn't, and I think what we're trying to say, it doesn't have to be that way. And and I think it goes back again too, in terms of, especially doing family law litigation, just because you can do something doesn't mean you should.
Right. Right.
And I think that's, and so the thing with like collaborative law, you move away from all of that, I guess, that BS, that posturing, that making things, and that heightened type of anxiety and litigation just because I can send out discovery, but doesn't mean I should in a child support case where all I need is just child support modification, where just I need tax returns, I need
Right.
W-2s, I need
Like, why can't you just, even in that case, why can't you just say, hey, can we just openly exchange these documents? Like,
Oh, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to write a letter. I'm going to be very civil. I'm going to be like, hey, can we pause formal discovery and just exchange this? But I mean, come on, we've been doing this long enough where I know what I'm going to get.
right, right, right.
So,
and we all know what the court's going to make everyone give. So why are we wasting everybody's time? Right. I mean, I don't know. Yeah.
I don't know, but I've been in court and I've just been basic, the court has said, the court is not going to rule on post-secondary for a kid who doesn't know where they're going to go. Right. Why?
Right.
Okay. So that's my little tangent, because
that's your Christmas divorce attorney rant this year.
That's my Christmas. But no, seriously, it's like, who does that, right? On Christmas Eve. Oh, here's this package of discovery for you. You have 63 pages on child support modification.
Well, if that's how you practice law, guess what? It's going to get done to you too. And you're not going to love it. I mean, I don't know. It's just kind of sleazy. I don't know. Doesn't kind of. Well, so that's what I think kind of meant with the civility. Like, you see newer attorneys just like coming out of the gate. So when I was a new attorney, I was always really courteous to the other attorney because I knew I didn't know what I was doing. But what I've found more recently is that younger attorneys are so cocky, they think they know, and they're just going to get nailed. But, that was not what I thought was a good idea when I first started practicing. I was like, be as nice as I can. And, because I'm going to make a mistake and they might give me a break.
It's interesting though, when I was a younger attorney, I came out with guns blazing. And I don't know if that's because I have a prosecutor background or maybe that's just my personality. Or actually, no, I take it back. I thought to be a good lawyer meant you had to be aggressive, and you had to be aggressive all the time. And it was only through doing cases with older lawyers that I saw, oh, wait a minute, it doesn't have to be this way. And it can be better if I tone it down and I'm professional and if I'm courteous and civil.
Right.
So you were a better person than me coming out of the gate.
Well, I mean, if you're a prosecutor, you actually know how to try cases. I mean, I think you and I had this conversation before. It's like family law attorneys don't know how to try cases. If you try one case every 3 years, you're not a trial attorney. Family law attorneys in general are not experienced trial attorneys. We don't do it enough, right? Especially if you're good, because you settle your cases, because it's a waste of money in most cases. Right. But being a prosecutor, you learn, or defense attorney, you learn how to try a case. You know your rules of evidence. You know how to do it. And so, I mean, any family law attorney would be an idiot to take a case to trial against an experienced real litigation attorney, in my opinion.
I think in terms of just having doing trials as a prosecutor is that you learn that no one wins at trial.
Right.
And it is just completely out of your control. And especially more so doing family law. And I think that's why too, collaborative law is so important, because no one wins when you go to court. You lose. Even if you win in court, you're not going to get everything you want. Right. It's not, you're still going to lose something. Right. And it's just that all that emotional time and investment, and just the negativity.
One of the things I always think is like, most of these judges that are on the bench, like, I don't even know how old they are now. Like, okay, but very few of them practiced family law. So, if these judges have been at the prosecutor's office for 10 years, they are like a brand new family law attorney deciding these complicated matters, that's the last person I would want to say, and that's part of what I talk about in the consult. It's like, if you go to litigation, you don't have any control. You may have a brand new judge who has never practiced family law reading the statutes and making decisions that will last a lifetime for you. Or you might, by the luck of the draw, get one of the good ones. But there's not that many that have a lot of experience in family law, except if they've been on the bench a while. So, I wouldn't roll the dice on that. And also, wouldn't you want to make creative decisions if they fit for your family, things that a court can't do? Yeah.
Right.
So,
which you can do in collaborative law. I love
Right.
that. You can
Yep.
make creative decisions.
right. Like sometimes
And
people want to co-own a house, and it
Yeah.
works for them. I mean, we don't just say, yeah, co-own the house. We lay out every possible scenario for how to get out of that co-ownership if it becomes unnecessary or unwanted by either party. But, they might say, we want to co-own the house for 3 years while our kiddos graduate from high school, and then we'll sell it. And this is how we'll divide the net proceeds, So,
Right.
I mean, that's one of the things I love the most about collaborative process or interest-based mediation, is just coming up with creative things that fit individual families that may be outside the box.
Which you can't do in regular divorce.
No.
I kind of, this is what I like about collaborative law, collaborative divorce. I feel like in traditional litigation divorce, it's about tearing people apart. And in collaborative law or collaborative divorce, you're instead of tearing someone apart, you're trying to keep things intact, keep that relationship intact, and just, well, now that we're no longer together, how do we move forward?
How do we create a two home family?
Right.
Yeah. And how do we, I think one of the things I love the most about collaborative divorce is that the work that they do with the parenting coach or the person that's the coach, they do some decoupling work. So, whereas parents have been parenting as husband and wife,
Right.
they need to learn how to parent as mom and dad. They
Yes.
can't bring that broken husband and wife dynamic or wife and wife or husband and husband or
Right.
whatever. They can't bring that broken, partner relationship to the co-parenting. They have to create a new co-parenting relationship so they can do this from a new place. So I think is one of the most valuable things about it.
And I think it just goes back to it goes back to your experience as a child, that people don't realize how much an impact their divorce has on their children.
Yeah.
And how it can affect them into well beyond their childhood years, their teenage years, into adults. And
middle-aged.
and then, well, yeah, I mean, it's like my parents got divorced when I was really young. I think I was 3 or 5, and I think this is the only thing that I remember, is that my mom was giving me my sister a bath in the bathtub, and then she just broke down and started crying. And I don't even remember why, but I know it had to do with the fact of the divorce. And I don't even know if my mom would remember if I brought it up to her now. But yeah, that just the fact that my dad got remarried. My dad had a new family. There's me and my sister, and he had 2 girls. And I just remember feeling, oh, okay, so now we're replaced. And although my mom never spoke negatively about my dad, it's still, there was, they were not co-parents. Let's put it that way. It just felt separate, right?
Right. Yeah.
And it had its own trauma on me, growing up that I'm probably still dealing with.
One of the things I think that's so interesting is that, in a child's normal development, they, at 8 or 9 or at 3 or 5, you're not, whatever, part of your development, you're not supposed to be like attuning to like complicated dynamics between people. You're not, you're supposed to be going about your business. As a 3 or 5-year-old, you're, skipping to,
Right.
to your friend or whatever. And as an 8 or 9 year old, you're starting to like sort of develop a little bit more intellectual abilities and whatever. But you're not supposed to be worrying about, how is my dad feeling? How's my mom feeling? If I do this, what? You're not supposed to be doing that. So what a conflictual divorce does, and it probably happens even in collaborative divorces to some degree, because you do have to start thinking about that. But definitely a conflictual divorce, it disrupts the normal growth, development of a child, because they're forced to think about things that other kids in intact families don't have to think about. So and also it's traumatic. You remember it as a 3 or 5 year old. Most 3 or 5 year olds don't remember much, and it made such an impact that it's like burned in your memory. And the same with me. I remember conversations, and it's like trauma sort of burns memory into your brain. So when we, what we want to do with collaborative divorce is just like reduce the impact to the kids so they can continue going on with their normal developmental phases, through life. I mean, sometimes you talk to people that parents got divorced after they were 18 and maybe away at college, and they have a very different, I have a few friends that have that. They don't have that sort of fracturedness that they have if their family of origin breaks apart. It's like they're already gone. So they got to meet all those developmental phases in life and go off on their own, sort of. I mean, it's 18, but they got to leave the house and it was intact when they left. I think I just think it causes a break in people when you do it badly, especially.
Well, and like in my situation, it's not like I was so young, I don't remember exactly what happened. And it's not as if my mom badmouthed my dad, but it was just the fact that I think they weren't in this co-parenting relationship. And then that's not too, I don't think they knew how, but I think my own issues has to do with just feeling abandoned by my father,
Right.
especially with him kind of moving, because I lived in Hawaii and then he ended up moving away to California and then having kids and then feeling replaced. And but it's just divorce and just what happens. I think what you were saying about how the attachment or the relationship between the child and both of their parents is really important. And the impacts last longer than people realize. I was just back home in Hawaii for the holidays, and we had this terrible ice storm, and so it looks like our flight was going to get delayed. And thank God my dad doesn't listen to this podcast, so no one else from my family does either. But so I remember I called my dad and I said, "Hey Dad, we have this opportunity to stay until like the 27th or the 28th, and can we stay with you?" And my dad said, "Oh, he
Is your dad,
paused."
is he in Hawaii?
Yeah, he's in Hawaii.
Okay.
He moved away and then he moved back to Hawaii. So he said, "Oh, because we were staying at a hotel and the hotels were too expensive at this point because we're headed to Christmas." And so he paused and I said, "Hey, so can we stay with you?" Right? He's got a condo, him and his wife. And he paused and he said, "Oh, well, let me see, because we're supposed to go here to, it's my younger half sister. We're supposed to go to her and her husband's place. I think it was for Christmas Day. And then there's going to be someone else that was there. And my sister's husband had ordered the ham, and it was like a 5-pound ham, and there may be enough food. And then I think on Christmas Eve, my younger sister and her husband were going to come to his house. But basically, anyway, I said, "Dad, but I'm your daughter." And for me, this is what it felt like. It felt like my dad was telling me, "Well, I don't know if you can stay with me because you're going to mess up my plans, because I'm going to go to your younger sister's house and I don't know if there's not going to be enough food for you." Or it might inconvenience me. And that sounds so horrible, but, and I know that's not how he meant it. But man, let me tell you this, Sarah, just the flashback I was taken back to when I was a child or a teenager and
Yes.
not feeling wanted.
Right.
And
Yeah.
that's just having, oh, well, my new family
Right.
takes precedence above you and your sister.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then that's why I was like, Dad, I'm your daughter. I'm not some stranger. Like, and I even said, Dad, I can do my own thing for Christmas Eve and Christmas Day. Like, we have family in Hawaii. I
Right.
don't have, like, in my head, I'm like, I don't have to be with you. And then my other head, I was thinking, God sakes, man, if you don't have enough food, we can bring food. We
Right.
can pick up some steaks or something. But
Right.
it was this, I was so hurt. And then I just had to, and he's like, wait. Let me see. Let me see. And I just had to hang up the phone. I'm like, okay, bye. Cause my voice was breaking and I was
Yeah.
crying. And right away, like I called my sister and I couldn't even get words out.
Yeah.
My sister is a year and a half older than me. And I just started crying on the phone to her. And she's like, what's wrong? What's wrong? Calm down. Calm down.
Yeah.
I was just, so she had to talk, thank God for my older sister. She talked me down a ledge and she's like, I'm sure Dad didn't mean it the way that he said it. And then sure enough, I got this text from my dad and he's like, if you guys need to stay with me, it's fine.
Mm.
Um,
But
but
it
still, it just,
brings you right back. I mean, that's the thing. It's like that happens to me all the time.
that does.
I mean, yeah, all the time. It's like, my dad and his wife and their kids, their life is built around them.
Yeah.
Like, and it does, like,
Yeah.
they don't know our friends. They don't really even know us. I mean, it's all about that family. And I just told my dad, I think on Christmas, I was like, it's not fun for us to be with you like on vacation, because it's almost like we're invisible, weird cousins. Like
Like
everything is
interlopers.
yeah. And it's like, if we always feel not a part of, and I have an older sister too. She's 2 years
Mm.
older. So my sister and I are bonded in this trauma of our
Yeah.
childhood, and the only two people that get it are the two of us.
Yeah.
And we have, and my sister's like a nightmare, but we have this thing that draws us together, that shared trauma, and those two shared parents, and just always that feeling of like, you're not, it'd be so much easier if you just didn't exist, like that
Mm.
feeling that I have with my dad, that you guys are this complication of life, and it's like, I'm so
Yeah.
glad you guys got to go on and have like a really easy, good life, and your other kids' lives have been so easy, and they didn't have to go through any of this stuff. They learned to save money when they were young because they had parents. They, I mean, I was just clawing back from death, like when they were learning all those life skills, and I had to teach myself most of it because they didn't teach it. I was like out of the house by the time I was 17 and never went back. So I don't know. It does, but it does. I think, I share this with my clients. I'm like, this stuff keeps happening to me as an adult. And
Yeah.
the reason I do this, I don't want ever, because what's cool is in collaborative divorce, collaborative process, we can have them work with the coach and really tell them like how this impacts your kids. If you're just going to go get married again and have other kids, this is how you do that right. This is how, you can't keep someone from doing that. But if you're going to do it, this is how you do it. You don't like let that other family, you have to make a place for that child, and you have to make it feel like it's also their home. But, and if you're going to marry someone that doesn't want that, maybe you should move on, because
That's a good point. Right.
because that's actually really unhealthy. I mean, I think in our culture, it's sort of this idea of like, you should hate your ex. But if you think about it, it's actually ridiculously unhealthy. Like as an older person, I think, hey, if I had a partner that had a good co-parenting relationship with their ex-spouse, that's actually a healthy sign, not a sick,
Yeah.
not, it's healthy. It means that they can honor what they had and honor that relationship, and they'll only be the parents for those kids ever. I wouldn't be. And that means that they're a good person. If they're always talking crap about the person they were with, that means it's not really that great of a sign.
Well, and I think it just goes, I think it just like, I think sometimes people just need that light bulb switch, which
Right.
collaborative divorce helps you with, that divorce coach or the parenting specialist, how you talking negatively about the children's father impacts and hurts your children so much more than you realize. Because we all love our children, and I mean, we all want to do good by them. And sometimes you just need someone saying, like, hey, maybe you telling, well, speaking in front of your child, I wish your father saw you more, or I wish your dad's such a deadbeat. Your dad never should have left us. Or you look at your dad and his new wife or his new girlfriend. Like, that really does hurt the kids. All the kids they just want to feel loved. We just want, both parents' attention. I
And
mean, think about it. Kids are
well,
selfish.
you want your parents to, I mean, what we can teach them in collaborative processes, we can say, like, look, parents, you need to create this unified front here.
Yeah.
You need to do this. And your kids they don't have to be in the middle of this. They shouldn't be worrying about making decisions. You guys need to be the adults here and figure this stuff out. So what they're hearing the same thing. We love you. Oh, you're going to have fun at your dad's. You're going to have fun at your mom's. You guys are going to do this, have fun, and there's going to be speed bumps. There's going to, when new partners come in, that's going to be hard. So, the thing we teach them is like, hey, when you have these challenges, go see your co-parenting coach. Go do a couple sessions with them and talk about how you're going to introduce these people. I mean, they do some of that in the divorce planning. They talk about introducing new partners, and a lot of people put things in their parenting plan that say, this is what we're going to do. But when it happens or whatever, and they need to talk about like bumps that they're having with it, they've learned that we can talk with our co-parenting coach. Let's go back to them and do a couple of sessions, and maybe we can walk through this. I mean, it still might be painful, but maybe we can walk through this with more grace, and that will be better for our kids. Because if you ask parents, almost every time you say, really, let's get down to, like, not money, not this. I know that probably the most important thing here are your kids. And 10 out of 10, they're like, yeah, that is really what, because they have all this static, like, I need money, I need this, I need that.
Right.
But get down to it. That's really what most people care about. And you can tell them, you know what, you guys both care about that. That's really the most important thing to both of you, is that your kiddos come out of this okay, and that they have what they need, right? And so if you can kind of bring them to instead of, what litigation does is that it keeps them in, like, fear. Everything about litigation and conflict is fear-based. And in collaborative law, it's more like love-based, like, oh, let's create agreements that are good for you and for me. Let's create agreements that are good for our kids. So it's like, if you ask people to, I mean, it's just so obvious that those two things are in conflict with love and fear. And, processes feed those things, like fear, litigation, love, caring, collaborative. I mean, and I think go ahead.
I think it goes like, okay, like, it's litigation destructive, where collaborative law is reconstructive. How do we reconstruct things from that husband and wife relationship to co-parenting relationship? Or if you don't have kids, it's just, how do we reconstruct ourselves into separate individuals, and where we both be okay, and the couple gets to be in control of that process. Because, like, how you talked about in traditional litigation, you're not going to have a judge saying what's going to happen when two partners come into play. You have so much more freedom and creativity to put things into your parenting plan via collaborative law than you do have via litigation.
Or even if they're just like aspirational things, a lot of that stuff's not enforceable. We all know that. But I mean, just having the conversations with the parenting coach, it's aspirational. It's like, like I have this section that most of the co-parenting coaches put in their, when they do their parenting worksheet, like they do a worksheet and they give it to us to draft the legal plan. And it'll say like, we have created this parenting plan using these principles, honesty, I mean, it's sort of, they use, it's kind of the same, but it basically says, here's an intention statement. This is how we created this, and this is what we care about. And then here's some really extended dispute resolution process options that are laid out. So it's kind of a reminder to the parents that even though, some of that's not enforceable, like, yeah, that if they go back and read it later, or if their kids read it later, what do they see? They say, oh my God, this is what my parents, this is what they were going for to accomplish when they made this plan. Because
Right.
kids may see those someday.
Yeah. No, for sure. Definitely. Kids may see that someday. Good Lord, right?
Right, right. I mean, imagine the litigation cases where the kids can go down and look at the family law motions that have been filed in their case. Oh my God. Like,
All the mudslinging.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So I think so we covered so much here today, Sarah. Thank you so much for your time and your vulnerability and sharing with our listeners, how your own parents' divorce, how that trauma affected you so much more than anyone could have ever thought or anticipated or speculated. And I think it's something though that's really important for people to hear though. And that trauma is so lasting. You like, again, like I said, here I am in my middle age and I thought I've dealt with my own feelings, and boom, something happens and it's just right out there, and I'm just my 14-year-old little girl self feeling not wanted,
Yeah.
not loved.
Yeah.
And it sucks.
Yeah.
It sucks, folks.
Right. But the good news is we can, and that's what I say, like, hopefully we can help some other kids
Yeah.
not have to grow up that way. And,
Right.
it was the times, what do you do? But, I love that I can share my experience and say, I'm sure you don't want your kids. I mean, there's tons of research that shows kids that have bad relationships with one parent have a higher incidence of mental health issues, drug and alcohol addiction, promiscuity, all of those things. So, we know that will happen. I mean, it doesn't happen to everyone, but we know it happens to a preponderance of kids that have that trauma in their lives. So, we can do better, and we are doing better, and this is evolution, right? It's evolution of divorce law and knowing what we know now that we didn't know even 10 years ago or 20, so it's great. It's positive, and hopefully it will develop even more and be even cooler as time goes on. Hopefully we can be retired by then.
Yeah, no, I think that's the next step too, is that from when I started practicing law, when I first came up here in 2005, it's just like collaborative law was, the redheaded stepchild of family law and divorce.
Right.
And it shouldn't be. It would be nice to be in a world where collaborative divorces are like 95% and litigation.
Yeah. Collaborative divorce and interest-based mediation.
Right.
Because, not all people need that much process, but they certainly can use an interest-based facilitator to help.
Right.
Yeah.
So there's a kinder, gentler, softer, more efficient way to get divorce. And it's called
exchange information, right?
And it's called collaborative law. Sarah, what's the takeaway here? What's the last word that you would want people to know about collaborative law, collaborative divorce, and the benefits of it?
Well, first I just say, if you, if you go for a consultation and the lawyer doesn't explain all your different process options, I would go to talk to some different lawyers, because if they're not telling you all your options, you're being forced into a litigation process. That doesn't mean they won't be civil, but you should, I mean, I'm sort of you should be the master of your own destiny. It's like, if somebody doesn't tell me there's 3 cars I can buy, but I only get one, I want to know. And like I said, most people will not choose that if they know the full range of options available to them. I wish more attorneys would explain all process options to people so people can make an informed choice, but they don't. Maybe in the future they will, but if they lose business, they're not going to tell people about it, right? So
Yeah.
I guess the biggest takeaway though would be, you know, do this in a way that honors what's most important to you. And in most cases, that's your kids, or if you don't have kids, maybe you have dogs or cats, or honors, just how you want to be in the world of like coming from a place of kindness and love versus a place of fear. And, walk out of it with integrity.
Or preserving your mental health and your emotional peace and serenity are big takeaways too.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, thank you so much, Sarah. Again, thank you so much for just sharing your gosh. I mean this is the only way I can think of it, because I know you've been to Hawaii. Have you heard that Hawaiian word mana'o?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
It's basically sharing like your thoughts, the essence of you and your mental thought processes and just like who you are. So thank you so much, Sarah, for sharing your mana'o and just just being so vulnerable with us.
Thank you for having
Appreciate
me.
it. Well, thank you to all the listeners out there. And thank you for listening to the Akiona Law podcast, wherein we discuss everything that intersects in the areas of family law and divorce. Until the next time, be well. Thank you. This is Ululani Akiona of Akiona Law.
The information in this podcast is general advice only and should not in any respect be relied on as specific legal advice.